18 through 19 is our goal today. There's just no good way there's no way to sugarcoat this section. It's just bad all around. And I think that's the point. It's going to come up a couple times in those days. Israel had no king and everyone did as they saw fit. And here's a bunch of examples of what happens when everyone does what they see fit. So let's start in Judges 17. Remember, Samson was going to be the last of the actual judges. There were going to be more judges, Eli and Samuel, and then Samuel's two sons before King Saul comes around. But we don't talk about any more specific judges, just talk about the general spiritual depravity of the land over the last few chapters of the book. So Judges 17, 1 through 6, we'll start there. Everyone have sheets, by the way? Do we have sheets are in the corner there if anyone. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. I can print more if needed. Need to start printing more. We got good attendance. That's great. You're going to read it, Susie? Thank you. Okay.
There was a man from the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, "You know that 1,100 shekels of silver which were taken from you, about which you spoke a curse that I heard. Look, I have the silver. I took it." His mother said, "May my son be blessed by the Lord." Micah returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother. Then his mother said, "The silver that I received for my son, I solemnly dedicate to the Lord, to make a cast and engraved idol for my son's benefit. So now I will return it to you." He returned the silver to his mother, and his mother gave 200 shekels of silver to the silversmith, who made them into a cast and engraved idol, which was placed in the house of Micah. This man Micah had a house of God, where he placed a special priestly vest, and a household god, where he ordained one of his sons as his own priest. In those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did whatever was right in his own eyes.
Okay, before we move on, just a couple things on your sheets there. The image and the idol, the word is teraphim. Image is in the shape of a human form. The story of Rebecca's family, right? Back with Abraham and Isaac and Rebecca. Rebecca's family had those teraphim, that are household gods, is how it's translated. Most likely some of Micah's ancestors. It can be innocent enough. They're not always worshipped as gods. Sometimes it's just like you can build a statue to something and not worship it as your god, right? It's a memorial. It's it's just a remembrance of someone who's passed and the things they've done. But it's not something you venerate. It's not something you worship.
Martin Luther.
Yeah, Luther statue, right?
Isn't that a seminary?
All the synodical schools. They have the two prep schools and the college and the seminary all have a Luther. Yeah, that'd be a perfect example. That'd be a teraphim. In and of itself, it's fine unless you make it not fine and start bowing to it and offering sacrifices to it and praying to it and things like that. Clearly here at Micah's house, they were objects of worship. And then an ephod, remember at the end of Gideon's story, remember what Gideon did when, I don't want to be your king, but here's what I want you to do. Everyone give me some gold. And then he melted it down and he made a golden ephod. And then people started worshiping the ephod in the town where Gideon was living. So the ephod God does talk about the ephod for the priest, the high priest, when he talks about the vestments they're supposed to wear. When he led worship, the breastplate, right? And there was the 12 stones for the tribes of Israel and the Urim and Thummim and all those different things. But this, you don't get to just make your own, right? There was one that was prescribed, and you're not supposed to just go ahead and make your own ephod. Not sanctioned by the Lord. This whole shrine was used for idolatry. We're going to break down this whole section. Let's finish it, and then we'll backtrack. 7 through the end of the chapter. Someone else want to take it from there?
Take it.
All right, I got Lynn first. Fred, you'll get the next one.
Meanwhile, there was a young man from Bethlehem of Judah, the city which belonged to a clan of Judah. He was a Levite, but he resided in Bethlehem, even though he was not a Judean. This man left the city, Bethlehem of Judah, to take up residence wherever he could find a place to stay. As he went on his way, he came to the house of Micah in the hill country of Ephraim. Micah said to him, "Where did you come from?" He answered, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah. I am going to take up residence wherever I can find a place to stay." Micah said to him, "Stay with me. Be a father and a priest to me. I will give you 10 shekels of silver a year, an allowance for your clothing and your food." So the Levite went with him. The Levite was willing to stay with the man, and he became like one of his sons. Micah ordained the Levite, so the young man became his priest and lived in Micah's house. Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will treat me well, because I have this Levite as my priest." In those days there was no king in Israel.
Okay, thank you. So let's just start in chapter 17. Name all the sins you can find in chapter 17. It's like how many words can you find hidden in this picture? How many obvious sins can you find in chapter 17? Okay, a lot of idolatry. Yep. All right, right at the beginning, the son goes to mom and says what? Remember, 1,100 shekels came up with Delilah, that she was promised by the 5 leaders of the Philistines, 1,100 shekels each. And we said that figures about 15 years of wages, so 3 years of wages. Hey, Mom, yeah, that was me. I took that from you. You wonder if it's because I heard you utter a curse. Maybe he was a little freaked out that, uh-oh, I better give this back. Mom's response to that sin? You're such a good boy. Yeah, Lord bless you, my son. And in fact, now I'm going to try to reverse the curse and try to give a blessing instead of it. And then what does she do right away? What's she going to consecrate her silver for?
Idol.
Remember how the first commandment continues? You shall have no other gods. And then what's the part right after that? And this is where if you go to like a Baptist church, they have a different numbering of the commandments because they make this their second commandment.
Thou shalt not make a
Graven image, yeah. God, from the very beginning, don't worship things and call it me. Not until he takes on human flesh does it something that you can touch and say, this is the Lord. I am the Lord. I will not give my glory to another or my praise to idols. Well, what does she say? I consecrate my silver to Jehovah, that covenant name of God, for my son to make a carved image and a cast idol. Literally the first commandment. And she says, well, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, anything else?
Well, that very end, now I know that the Lord will treat me well because
Yeah,
I have this Levite as my priest.
yeah. So what is Micah,
Always thinking-
what's his attitude here?
I was thinking, hey, I'm golden as long as I have this guy for a priest looking over me. And
Got my personal priest here,
Yeah.
and kind of, now I'm good.
that's
Now
kind of
nothing
an
can
idol
harm me.
too, you know. In a way,
You said what, in a way? Sorry, I
it's
missed
kind
it.
of like an idol in a way
Sure,
too.
yeah, absolutely, it's like an idol. Yeah, not just a graven image, but a person can totally turn into your idol. Now I'll be okay, since I have this. We should talk about the priest for a second. Remember when the land was allotted, the Levites didn't get their own hunk of land. They were spread throughout the 48, there were 48 different cities where the Levites lived, and the point of that was to have pastors everywhere, so to speak, not just all concentrated in one area. Well, Bethlehem was not one of those 48 cities. So this guy kind of has gone rogue, and he decides to live in Bethlehem of Judah, even though he's not a Judean. And at the end of the day, it sounds like he's kind of for hire, right? Looking for a place to stay. Hey, I'll give you 10 shekels a year in clothing and food. And that sounds like a good idea. We're going to find out later his name is Jonathan, the name of this priest in chapter 18.
Joel Osteen.
What? Joel Osteen, yeah. And we're going to find out he's not from Aaron's line. So remember, Levites all were part of the work of the tabernacle and the work of the temple and the work of the church, but only Aaron's line was designated to be priests, not all the sons of Levi, just Aaron's line. And he's not from Aaron's line. He's the son of Moses. He's from Moses. Remember, Moses and Aaron were brothers, but he's from this line. So he's a Levite, but he's not from the line that's supposed to be priests. So technically, he shouldn't even be taking this job, right? So you got all sorts of a mess here in chapter 17. Anything else you can find? I think that's most of them.
With the first commandment goes the third commandment.
Yeah, first commandment broken, third commandment broken. You could say the second commandment broken, she's certainly misusing the Lord's name here. Right? So the first three are shattered.
Pastor,
Yeah,
Micah thinks that just because he's got this priest and these idols, that the Lord is gonna bless and be good to him
yeah,
over what he did.
yeah. I feel totally safe and secure now because I have set up my gods, I have my shrine, I have my own personal priest. I suppose we have to be careful of that sometimes too, right? Do we tempted to, as long as I have this and this, not that maybe we go to this level, but at the end, if we even go a little bit into this thought, I sit, I don't know, I have my cross on the wall, I have, anytime you put more security in stuff than you do God. And it could be religious stuff, it could be money, it could be family, it could be anything, right? My job, this is what's gonna make me secure. Rather than, no, the Lord is what makes me secure, and the rest of it can come and go. The Lord is my portion forever.
Well, it also seems like this Levi was kind of for hire,
Yeah, yeah,
and which, bespeaks the issue of motivation
Right, yeah.
behind what he was doing. And he also allowed himself to be placed in this realm of God where if, he was worshipped or he was thought to be the answer, and he allowed that.
a good Levite should say what? I'm not your help. The Lord is your help, right? Yeah. One thing, yeah, take care of the work is worth his wages, but it's clear this guy is kind of, like you say, in it for hire, and he doesn't seem to mind having all this happen under his watch. And he's going to get hired by someone else here in chapter 18. And it's going to be quick to be wishy-washy and go a different direction. Well, let's let the train wreck continue. Before we get into this, so Dan, so remember Dan, one of the 12 sons of Jacob was Dan. I'll just give you the quick geography history lesson. When the tribes entered the land, Dan was given an area kind of in southwest Israel, so you had the Philistines here on the coast, and I think the Ammonites, I believe, are down there too, Ammonites, one or the other. And it was an area where they were they didn't drive them out of the land the way they were supposed to. And it was a tumultuous area, okay? There would have been a lot of pressure from both sides. So when they say they don't have any inheritance, it's not that they didn't, it's that they didn't like the area. When the lots were chosen, they were last. So they got kind of the last portion. That doesn't mean they couldn't still have the land. They should have just done what God told them to do, and he would have blessed them. However, they didn't, and now they're in all this trouble. So they said, we don't like it here anymore. We want to find a different area to settle. All right, Fred, I'm going to have you go through verse 6.
In those days there was no king in Israel. Also in those days some members of the tribe of Dan were seeking a territory of their own in which to live, because up to that day they had not taken possession of their inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel. So the descendants of Dan sent out from Zorah and Eshtaol 5 men who were strong warriors. They were to represent their clans and to scout the land and explore it. They said to the 5 men, "Go explore the land." So they went to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and they spent the night there. When they were near the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside there and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What advantage is there for you here?" He told them what Micah had done for him. "He hired me, and I became his priest." They said to him, "Please inquire from God, so that we will know whether the way we are going will lead to success." The priest said to them, "Go in peace. The way you are going is approved by the Lord."
Yeah. There's interesting, and you never know for sure, but I always kind of raise my eye. Please inquire of God. Why use God rather than the Lord there? Because he answers with the Lord Jehovah. I think there's always significance when you see the different names of God used in the Old Testament. please inquire of God. And he answers, well, and how do you know it has the Lord's approval? You're a fake priest, right? But he gives them the A-OK, he gives them the go-ahead. Ephraim's kind of right in the middle. That's like, ends up being Samaria, right in the middle of so it's like a halfway point to where they're going to end up at the end of the journey.
Maybe he just knows God, like the world knows, well, there's a God, but
Sure.
not the Almighty,
Yeah, a powerful
He's not.
being, yeah,
truly.
the true God. Right, right. Yeah, so they're not happy where they are, so they're going to find somewhere else to live. Some wondering, verse 3, they recognize the voice of the young Levite, and they wonder, how could they recognize his voice? Was there like an accent that the Levites had, some wonder? Was it that he was doing like priestly things and they overheard it, and they recognize that must be a Levite if he's doing priest stuff? Could be some different, not that it's a huge deal, but they recognize that it was someone from the tribe of Levi. So. All right, then 7 through 13.
I can read that.
John?
So the 5 men continued their journey until they arrived at Laish. They saw that the people there were living in the same way as the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting. There was no one to disturb them or oppress them. They were far removed from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone else. Then the 5 spies returned to their fellow tribesmen at Zorah and Eshtaol. Their brothers said to them, "What do you think?" 5 answered, "Get up, let us go against them, for we have entered the land and journeyed as far as Laish. We saw how the people lived in security in the same way as the Sidonians. But they were far from the Sidonians, and they had no dealings with Aram. Get up, let us go up against them, for we have seen the land. We assure you it is very good. Why are you still sitting here? Do not be slow. Get going to the land and take possession of it. When you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people whose land is spacious. Yes, God has given into your hands a place where there is no lack of anything on earth." So the clan of the Danites set out from Zorah and Eshtaol, and there were 600 men equipped for war. They went up and camped near Kiriath Jearim in Judah. That is why the place has been called Mahanadan
There you go.
to this
Good
present
job.
day, and is west of Kiriath Jearim. When they traveled on, they traveled on from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah.
Okay. So they get up there and they find this whole thing about the Sidonians. It seems like the residents of Laish had some connections to Sidonian, Tyre, and Sidon. That's right on the Mediterranean Sea, way in the northwest part, northwest of Israel. Jezebel is from that land. Her dad was a Sidonian. So it sounds here like, you know, these people are fine. They're doing their thing. They're in this beautiful land, but they don't have any help, or the help is a ways away. There's like mountains in between. So we can go totally take this place, and their brothers and sisters aren't going to be able to come defend them because they're way over there, and it's going to take them a while to get here. So this sounds like a perfect place for us to capture, for us to settle. Kind of the opposite of, remember the 12 spies? We shouldn't go because it's too bad. Even though it's a beautiful place, there's no way we can take it. Here it's, oh yeah, it's beautiful and we can take it, absolutely. Okay?
Pastor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do they all know to stop at Micah's house?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just telling the story of here's kind of how it happened. Yeah, I don't know. It's in the middle. I can tell you that Ephraim is a nice stopping point in between where they started and where they ended. So that's kind of a halfway point. So I think it maybe was just the Lord's hand for the purpose of us reading it today, to show just how bad stuff has gotten in Israel. All right. Well, now we get our household gods and Jonathan back in the story here. 14 through 21. Dean's got that one.
Except I don't have the whatever.
Oh, you know what?
So
What do you got
It
there?
sure sounds different, but let me try.
This is NIV?
NIV.
The new NIV? Okay.
Then the 5 men who had spied out the land of Laish said to their fellow Danites, "Do you know that one of these houses has an ephod, some household gods, and an image overlaid with silver? Now you know what to do." So they turned in there and went to the house of the young Levite at Micah's place and greeted him. The 600 Danites, armed for battle, stood at the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who had spied out the land went inside and took the idol, the ephod, and the household gods, while the priest and the 600 armed men stood at the entrance of the gate. How far do I go?
21.
When the 5 men went into Micah's house and took the idol, the ephod, and the household gods, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They answered him, "Be quiet, don't say a word. Come with us and be our father and priest. Isn't it better that you serve a tribe and clan in Israel as priest, rather than just one man's household?" The priest was very pleased. He took the ephod, the household gods, and the idol, and went along with the people. Putting their little children, their livestock, and their possessions in front of them, they turned away and left.
Yeah, so if you didn't think he was for hire before, now a better offer has come around, and you know what? That sounds good. I'll sign on the bottom line. I'll go with you guys. Make sure we take all the gods with us, and the household images, and the cast idols, and put the children in front. That's a defense mechanism, right? No one's going to kill children, so we'll put them out front. We'll stay in back.
Apparently they've never read ancient history.
Yeah, no, people didn't care too much. Gonna take a shot. Maybe at least our brothers and sisters in Israel won't kill the children, but
Still doing it today.
yeah,
There's nothing new under the sun.
nothing new under the sun. I don't know if there's anything else real deep there. Maybe take 22 to the end, and then we can chat about the rest. Micah's not going to be too happy with his priest and idols being taken, because this is what's protecting him, right? Remember, now I'm good. I have my priest and idols. Who's got that? Lynn Seifert's.
When they had gone some distance from Micah's house, the men who lived near Micah were called together and overtook the Danites. As they shouted after them, the Danites turned and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you, that you called out your men to fight?" He replied, "You took the gods I made and my priests and went away. What else do I have? How can you ask, 'What's the matter with you?'" The Danites answered, "Don't argue with us, or some hot-tempered men will attack you, and you and your family will lose your lives." So the Danites went their way, and Micah, seeing that they were too strong for him, turned around and went back home. Then they took what Micah had made and his priest and went on to Laish against a peaceful and unsuspecting people. They attacked them with the sword and burned down their city. There was no one to rescue them because they lived a long way from Sidon and had no relationship with anyone else. The city was in a valley near Beth Rahab. The Danites rebuilt the city and settled there. They named it Dan after their forefather Dan, who was born to Israel, though the city used to be called Laish. There the Danites set up for themselves the idols, and Jonathan, son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the tribe of Dan until the time of the captivity of the land. They continued to use the idols Micah had made all the time the house of God was in Shiloh.
Okay. All right. Couple things here. So Micah's not too happy. Why is he not happy?
They took his stuff.
This is all my stuff, yeah. This is the stuff that was protecting me. How can you do this? And what was the Danites' answer? Sorry about it. You want to fight? Basically, it's your people against our people. Be careful, don't argue, or some hot-tempered men might attack you. And Micah says, okay, and he turns around.
Micah admitted that they were gods too, so
Yeah.
he admitted that.
Admitted it as such, yeah. There's no doubt anymore that these are household gods.
Yeah, they weren't just statues.
Right.
Relatives or something.
Right. So they get up there, they sack the town, they rename it Dan. Let's keep your finger there and turn to 1 Kings chapter 12. So now you have to fast forward to after David dies and Solomon comes, and then Solomon dies. And remember, Solomon's son Rehoboam was kind of a jerk and wanted to tax the people unfairly and enslave people, and the civil war starts, right? So Jeroboam takes over in the north, Rehoboam is in the south, because that's the line of Judah is in the south. We're going to start at verse 25, 1 Kings 12:25. And we can take it through through the end of the chapter, 25 through the end of the chapter. Here's how the story ends up with what happened to the Danites up there. Someone want to do that? You can keep going, Dean, if you're good with it.
Then Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built up Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their Lord, small l, Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. One he set up in Bethel and the other in Dan, and this thing became a sin. The people came to worship the one at Bethel and went as far as Dan to worship the other. Jeroboam built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. He instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival held in Judah, and offered sacrifices on the altar. This he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves he had made. And at Bethel he also installed priests at the high places he had made. On the 15th day of the 8th month, a month of his own choosing, he offered sacrifices on the altar he had built at Bethel. So he instituted the festival for the Israelites and went up to the altar to make offerings.
Okay, so when you hear about Bethel and Dan, your mind goes to the divided kingdom. Bethel was the border on the south between Judah and Israel. Dan is the border way up north. So Bethel and Dan, it'd be like from Los Angeles to DC, from South Padre Island, Texas to Fargo, North Dakota. You know, the bottom part and the top part. That's kind of from coast to coast, from sea to sea. So now, a couple other places. Turn to, again, keeping your finger, don't lose your spot in Judges. Genesis chapter 49. Genesis 49, verse 16 and 17. And then, got that? This is Jacob when he's blessing his sons before he dies. Dan is one of the 12.
Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake in the way, a viper in the path. It bites the horse's heels so that its rider falls backwards.
Yeah, especially verse 17 there is kind of interesting. Is that a little prophecy of what's going to happen one day with the people of Dan? Not exactly a positive blessing. And then, Revelation chapter 7. Start at verse 4 through 8. Get to read all the names of the kids. I want to take that. Jim's got that.
4 through 8?
Yeah.
And I heard the number of those sealed, 144,000 sealed from all the tribes of the people of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 who were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 who were sealed.
Yeah. Couple things interesting. Judah might move to the top of the list, even though he's fourth in line. Reuben was the firstborn. And notice who's missing from the list.
Dan.
Yeah. We can only guess as to why, but is perhaps this account of Judges 18. Not that people in Dan weren't Not that there were no believers there or anything like that, but was this such a stain? Was it such a stain on the history of those people that the tribe of Dan, even here in the book of Revelation, it wasn't a surprise that the Danites were left out?
Pastor, there's 12 tribes that are listed there.
Yeah. But Levi, so Levi's listed. He didn't get land, right? And then Ephraim, Manasseh were the two sons of Joseph. Dan's not listed, Ephraim's not listed, but Joseph is. So Joseph and one of his sons are listed, but Dan is not listed. I think that math all works out.
Because Israel took both of Joseph's sons as part of his family.
Right,
Part of
right.
the tribes.
It works out, trust me. And it's Revelation, so we don't want to get too crazy with it. Anyway, for our purposes, Dan's not there, and you wonder, I wonder why. Well, this story we just read may be the reason why. Anything else on chapter 18? Couple questions here again, right? What is the point of the author's comment? In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as he saw fit. Comes up a couple times.
It's self-explanatory. They did what they wanted.
Everyone just does what they want to do. Everyone just does what they want. Here's the sad commentary on the state of the land when the Lord is not your king. And that gets into the application question. When we don't accept him as our king, and we're not talking about like decision theology there, but when we don't recognize Christ's reign, what happens? If he's not in charge, who's in charge? The sinful flesh, the devil, right? You think of, they're in cahoots. Our sinful flesh and the devil are like this. And if we say, you know what, Jesus, I don't really like what you think about this or that, I'm going to do my own thing. Well, here's just a little example of how things can go pretty haywire pretty fast. And we can all think of times in our lives where you look back and say, maybe if I would have just bowed to the reign of Christ rather than my own sinful heart, things would have ended a little differently.
So this was before kings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So when he says Israel had no king, what he's basically saying is that God was not their king at this time. They were not allowing God to be their king at this time.
Yeah, technically this should have been a theocracy, right? God's in charge. And just let him be the boss. Well, that didn't work too well, so the judges came around. They weren't meant to be kings, but spiritual, well, not even spiritual, military commanders that God used for his purposes to bring them back to God. And then finally, when you get to the kings, now God said, okay, you don't want me in charge? I'll let you be like all the other nations, see how that goes for you. And it didn't end up any better than it did, because we know how the sinful nature works. I'm good with that, unless you guys have anything more. This story gets really bad now. That was bad. Now it gets really bad. All right, Judges 19. Once again, we start with that same phrase. How about through verse 11? All right, thank you.
In those days there was no king in Israel. There was a certain Levite living in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took a woman from Bethlehem of Judah as a concubine. But his concubine committed adultery or prostitution against him, and left him in order to return to her father's house in Bethlehem of Judah. She remained there 4 months. Then her husband got up and went after her to appeal to her heart in order to win her back. He brought with him a young man who was his servant and a pair of donkeys. His concubine let him into her father's house, and when the woman's father saw him, he was happy to see him. The Levite's father-in-law, the father of the young woman, prevailed upon the man to stay with him for 3 days, eating, drinking, and spending the night there. On the 4th day they got up early in the morning, and the man got ready to leave. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Build up your strength with a little food. After that you may go." So the two of them sat around eating and drinking together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, "Please, I beg you, stay one more night and enjoy yourself." The Levite got up to go, but his father-in-law pressured him, so he stayed and spent another night there. How far?
Through 11.
He got up early on the morning of the 5th day in order to go, but the woman's father said, "Please build up your strength first." They delayed until the sun began to go down, while the two of them were eating. When the man got up to leave with his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the woman's father, said to him, "Please, the day is already turning into evening. Please stay the night. Look, the day is slipping away. Spend the night here and enjoy yourself. You can get up early tomorrow to be on your way and return to your home." But the Levite did not want to stay another night. Instead, he got up and went on his way, and he came to Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a pair of saddled donkeys as well as his concubine. When they were getting close to Jebus and the day was almost gone, the young man said to his master, "Let us turn aside to this city of the Jebusites and spend the night there."
Okay. So, a Levite who lives in the remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, so here's another Levite who's not living where he's supposed to live, one of those 48 cities. Takes a concubine, and remember the Old Testament talks about, it's one of those deals where marriage is supposed to be between one man and one woman, but he understands people's hearts are hard. Same thing when Jesus says, they ask him about divorce, right? Here's why he let Moses talk about divorce and writing a certificate of divorce, because he understands people's sinful nature and things are going to happen, even though he doesn't want them to happen. So with concubines here, it's like you have your wife and then you're married to them, but they're like lesser wives. They don't have all the rights and privileges of your wife. So there's Exodus 21, Deuteronomy 21. God gives provisions for people. If you take concubines, you better take care of them. You better feed them. They don't just treat them like rag dolls. These are people. So he takes a concubine. And then, so the story goes, what does this lady do?
She cheats him.
Cheats on him, goes back home. What does he do then, the Levite? Goes after her. Father-in-law is a very generous guy, right? And we don't know all what's behind the scenes here and trying to get them back together, but he doesn't. He wants to, this is that Eastern hospitality, right? They just, that was Abraham today in the first lesson. When he sees the 3 visitors, what does he do? Bows to the ground, right? And let me, whatever you want, kill the calf and bring out all the bread and the cheese curds and the milk. And not sure if they were breaded or not and had marinara sauce with them, but Culver's cheese curds, or if they were mozzarella sticks or more of the little ones. Anyway, you go out of your way, because that's what people did back then when guests came, when visitors came. And you have an example of this here, which I think is going to be I think this is here to show you the contrast of what's going to happen next when the next place he goes, people aren't exactly at all going out of their way to be nice. In fact, it's just the opposite of that. So.
Well, I kept thinking, because you said it was bad, I kept thinking he's like trying to keep him there to poison him or kill him.
Oh, that he's gonna, yeah.
Why does
just
he
one
keep
more day.
saying, one more day.
I haven't figured out how to kill you yet. Just one more day. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't understand. It was like, why does he keep doing that?
Right. Yeah, I think it's just showing the guy's generosity and trying to keep, this is good. I'm glad you're back. Maybe it's an apology for what the daughter had done. She obviously was in the wrong by, committing adultery. Maybe he was trying to make up for that. So at the end of the day, the concubine is back and they start heading home. And we left off at the city of the Jebusites, so Jebus is going to end up being Jerusalem when King David conquers it. But right now it's still in control of not the Israelites. 12 through 21, next section. And thank you.
But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a foreign city that does not belong to the people of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah." He said to his young man, "Come on, we will continue on to one of these other places. We can spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah." So they continued on, and as the sun was going down on them, they came close to Gibeah, which belonged to Benjamin. There they turned aside to spend the night in Gibeah. But when the man went and sat in the city square, there was no one who took them into his house to spend the night. Just then an old man was coming from his work in the field because it was evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, but he was living in Gibeah, though the men of that place were Benjaminites. The old man looked up and saw the traveler in the city square, and the old man said, "Where are you going, and where did you come from?" The Levite said to him, "We are traveling from Bethlehem of Judah to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. I am from there. I traveled as far as Bethlehem of Judah, and now I am going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house. We even have straw and fodder for our donkeys, and we have enough bread and wine for me, for your servant, my wife, and for the young man. We, your servants, are lacking nothing." At this, the old man said, "Peace be with you. Anything you lack will be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the city square." So the old man brought the Levite to his house and fed the donkeys. He washed their feet, and they ate and drank together.
So, okay, let's stop here in Jebus. No, let's go on to where we have Israelites living. Let's try to get up to Gibeah. Benjaminites, so if you look at a map, right, Judah and Benjamin is right northeast of Judah, and then Ephraim is the next. Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim. Okay, fine. So we get there. No one's coming to help, so the hospitality is not there the way there was in the last section. This old guy comes from the fields, and basically he says what? When they say, "You know what, we'll hang out here," his answer?
Don't do that.
That's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. And you say, "Well, I wonder why not." We're going to find out real quick. Come with me. Come to my house. You're already starting to get a sniff of, that sounds kind of Sodom and Gomorrah-y. 22 through 26. Okay, thank you.
As they were making their hearts glad, all of a sudden the men of the city, worthless, good-for-nothing men, surrounded the house, pounding on the door. They said to the old man, the owner of the house, "Bring out the man who has come to your house. We want to get to know him." But the owner of the household went out to them and said, "No, my brothers, do not do such an evil thing. I beg you, since this man has come to my house, do not do this disgraceful, foolish thing. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Now I will bring them out, and you may abuse them and do to them whatever you see fit. Do not do this disgraceful, foolish thing to this man." But the men were not willing to listen to him. So the Levite took hold of his concubine and forced her to go out to him. They were intimate with her and mistreated her all night long until morning. Then they let her go at the break of dawn. As morning was dawning, the woman came and collapsed at the entrance of the man's house where her husband had been staying until the light of day. When her husband got up in the morning, he opened the doors of the house and went out in order to go on his way. There she was. His concubine had collapsed at the entrance of the house with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. So he put her on the donkey, got up, and returned to his place.
Just finish it.
Okay. When he got home, he took a knife, grabbed his concubine, and cut her into pieces, limb by limb. He cut her into 12 pieces and sent her to all the territory of Israel. Everyone who saw it said, "Nothing like this has ever been done or seen from the day the people of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day." The Levite commanded the men he sent to say the following to all the men of Israel: "Has anything like this happened since the day that the people of Israel came up out of Egypt, out of the land of Egypt until this day? Think this over, come up with a plan, and speak up."
Okay,
I don't get that,
what's that, the end?
the whole thing.
Yeah, let's talk about this. So how does this parallel Sodom and Gomorrah, that story?
Well, in one of the other versions, it's not, they don't knock on the door and say, "We want to get to know him." They say, "We want to have sex with
Yeah, I
him."
was gonna say, what version is that one you were reading?
EHV.
That's the new EHV, okay. That's what the Hebrew says, the word yada means to know, but that's what it means. Adam knew his wife Eve and they had a son. It's the most intimate way you can know someone is sexual relations, right? So, any other translation?
NIV says sex.
Have sex with, yeah, so you have the perversion of homosexuality here. You have so here's my virgin daughter, and the guy who came, here's his concubine, have them. And then he realizes, you know what, maybe, how about just the concubine? So he keeps his virgin daughter pure. the guy, the Levite, maybe up to this point, you thought this Levite, he seems like a nice guy. That son, his wife cheated on him, that's too bad. And they're just looking for a place to stay, and no one's being nice to them. And, apparently here's what he thinks about his concubine. Right? He'll take her, whatever. What does he do while she's getting raped all night? He sleeps, right? Verse 27. When her master got up in the morning. I'm going to, I think, call it a night as his wife's getting raped outside by these people who, I forget how the EHV put it, but, wicked men, right?
Good for nothing.
Good for nothing, right? I mean,
A lot
just
of
get,
empathy when he found her too.
yeah, so they rape her to death. They kill her. They rape her so much that she dies. Get up. You can imagine him like kicking her. Get up, let's go. She doesn't answer. She's dead. So what does he do to her? Before that even,
He
before
brings her,
that.
he throws her on the
Like a
donkey.
sack of potatoes, right? Whatever. Throw her on the donkey and get her home. And then they get home, and now he's upset, right? All of a sudden now there's this faux outrage. Where were you last night? So he cuts her. A Levite would be familiar. I mean, they were the ones in charge of the sacrifices, right? So they knew a thing or two about cutting up things, animals, and they did that.
Why
So-
would he cut her up? That's part of it.
So that's going to be. I want everyone to know what happened. This is a stain on Israel.
What's a stain on him for putting her out there?
I hear you. You're right. It's going to turn into a civil war next week. So yeah, he cuts her into 12 pieces and goes to FedEx and says, "Let's send it out to all the tribes." Talk about in those days Israel had no king and everyone did as he saw fit. I mean, this is about as low as it goes here. This is just a disgraceful story on all fronts, and especially the Levite. Looking at your sheets here. Yeah, I think we kind of talked about all that. Number 5 is where we're going to pick up next time. What's the next logical step for the Israelites to take against these men of Gibeah? There's going to be revenge, right? How can you people do such a horrible thing to this concubine? Number 6, I think we don't have to think too hard about. How often do we do that with Old Testament stories? Oh, those people were so bad. Those people were so evil. Well, yeah.
We're killing babies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. How many times do my sin isn't so bad compared to that. I mean, Judges 19 that's real sin. So I got a little angry yesterday. In God's eyes, is there a difference? You're perfect or you're not. Does something like this happen and it doesn't really, that's just the world we live in now. We're killing babies. Well, that's just America. Is it in my prayers every night? Some nights I forget, right? We could go on and on about the seat of our corruption is no different than theirs. Before we're too quick to judge everyone else's misdeeds, Jesus, who sinned, this boy or his parents? Right? Who sinned that this tower fell on these people and they all died? You repent. Don't worry about who sinned. You repent. Don't let God figure that all out. You got your own sins to think about. What else? Anything in chapter 19?
Just
I mean,
a
the
question.
story itself is a pretty simple. It's
So-
horrible, but it's
So the Levite, he knew, I mean, obviously you can tell that when he gets up and he's not very sorry about what happened to his concubine.
Yeah, opens
But
the
it's
door.
the other guy that gives her to them.
yeah. And he was so that other guy who seems like a nice guy that he letting him have shelter in his house and
Yeah.
don't stay here. It's bad out here. Well, that guy ends up being not so great a guy either. Well, here, take my virgin daughter, take the concubine, and he ends up. I don't know if it's because he was maybe the master of the house but the Levite is okay with it. And here you go, take her instead.
Maybe he felt protected or a good luck charm having he been blessed by having a Levite in his house.
Sure,
I'm
same
good
kind
to
of
that,
story as the
you know,
last couple
guy.
chapters. Yeah.
I get extra points.
Right. Yeah, almost superstitious.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that, and it shows in both this and the Sodom and Gomorrah story, they don't Nowadays, you just break down the door and do what you want, right? If you want to get in, you're going to go in and get the guys. But in both of these, and maybe that just shows the culture where that's a faux pas. You don't, no matter how bad you want to do that, you don't do that. Bring them out to us. We can't go in. Bring them out to us. I mean, if this mob is big enough, they're going to be able to figure out how to get inside and get their way. But it's just kind of interesting. Times have definitely changed when it comes to that. There's still worse cultural norms that you don't cross.
So if he would have continued to say no, then they wouldn't have tried?
I think so. I think so.
And they were Israelites,
Yeah,
bad guys?
yeah, yeah. This is in the land of Benjamin here. So this is going to set the stage for, I think next week we can finish the book. And there's going to be a civil war in Israel. You see the next heading, Israelites fight the Benjamites. And the book of Judges just ends with everyone kind of shaking their head. But that's what happens when we don't let the Lord be the Lord. Do things our way instead of His. All right, we're good. Good place to pause. Well, you wish you could end on a happier note. That is where we're going to pause.
This is the Old Testament.
It is the Old
The
Testament.
happy note is the New Testament.
So yeah, you make mention of that. Stuff like this, for a shred of a second, try to think about how angry this have made God. And then think about Good Friday. And just this sin alone, the judgment, someone has to pay for this horrible crime that happened. Just these last 3 chapters, how God's name has been reviled, the graven images, the homosexuality, the adultery, the Levites doing what they want, the cutting this lady. And just this 3 chapters alone, what Christ had to suffer just for that. And multiply that times everything else. It just puts it in perspective that we'll never, thankfully, have to worry about, but what hell must be like. Yeah. Alrighty, well, close with the blessing. Then the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all. Amen. So this will work out good. Next week we'll finish Judges, and then we'll have that open forum the week after that. Then we'll move on to